Hard Hat's all about showing up to play hard, doing what it takes to win.
If you want to cement legacy, win another.
He's your third center.
You don't want to pump him up too much, but it's hard not to.
This is maybe the most I've ever agreed with you.
Hey, Bobby Manning here, and welcome to a Wednesday edition of the Garden Report, checking in here on CLNS Media with Noa Dalzell, who's back after a couple of weeks away. Nice to see you, Noah.
Couple weeks. It was a 4-day vacation.
I haven't seen you in weeks, I feel like.
When was the last time I've seen you?
I don't think we've
I
done
saw
a
you
show in a long
at that
time.
Providence event. Yeah, we probably haven't done anything since Vegas, actually. So I guess you're right.
Yeah, so let's catch up on everything going on. Celtics have made some additions. We talked Sun. That's probably the last time we talked, a couple of weeks ago when that news came out, and there's been a lot of developments since. And the ESPN story that came out on that was pretty wacky, pretty wild, and intersects with this one, which not too unexpected. Bill Chisholm takes over the majority control of the Celtics. We got a list of his co-owners, which does include Wyc Grousbeck for the time being. Steve Pagliuca is going to stay on as some small shareholder for amount of time here as well as the transition happens. But there's going to be Chisholm's show. And I don't know how much we discussed it, at least on the show here. The news that Chisholm is going to be the governor per se, the decision maker here, and that Wyc's not actually going to hold on to that for some amount of time as originally planned, didn't surprise me at all. It seemed to surprise a lot of fans, and I know that was the plan per se, that there was going to be a transition period. But to me, whoever's paying for the team was always going to be the one making decisions about the team going forward. And I'm glad we have the clarity that it's Chisholm here, because this whole Wyc Bill dynamic, I think, would have just made things very confusing as we judge this ownership's decisions into the future.
So here's my thing and why I was initially surprised. And then the reporting on it changed, to be fair. Like initially, I think Shams and Ramona Shelburne of ESPN both collectively reported basically he's not going to be governor. He'll be an alternate governor. And then later on, there was additional clarification from Ramona. And, this seems to be kind of the party line that that Wyc and Bill are still going to be working hand in hand. And it's more of like a formality because Wyc's not going to be owning the 15% of the team required to be the team governor, which he wasn't ever owning 15%, but maybe with the way things were kind of shifting around, he thought that he could own a larger share. That's not going to happen to that extent. I was surprised because to me, why was Bill Chisholm selected to be the new Celtics owner, right? There were multiple bidders, including Steve Pagliuca, who has been one of the largest shareholders of this team, for 23 years. President of the Shamrock Foundation, very connected to the community, all of that, obviously passionate about owning this team, really wanted to, made it very clear. Why did Wyc pick Bill Chisholm over him? I haven't seen reporting that indicates that there was like a big disparity financially. So my impression, and this is my speculation, not like this has been told to me, but this was a factor, right? The fact that he was going to be able to stay on as governor for 3 years. And that kind of aligns with the Celtics window of Tatum and Brown's prime. And now he's going to be able to cash out at the highest value right after a title, sell the team, and then still be in that position. And so the fact that that didn't pan out, what I would want to know is if that were always going to be the case, would Steve Pagliuca have gotten the team? Like, was this the factor that made Bill's bid so appealing, that it gave Wyc kind of everything that he wanted? And so if so, then that's noteworthy to me, because I think that for a lot of reasons, Steve Pagliuca would have been a great kind of transition. It wouldn't have been a big transition. It would have been kind of more similarities with the previous ownership group for the players, all of that. So like, that's the part that's confusing. I understand from like a financial standpoint, everybody's like, yeah, if you're going to own the team, then you should have the ability to make decisions. And that's how it always is. And, it ends up that way with the Mavs and, businesses in general. Like you don't get to make decisions and not have to be financially responsible. But was that your understanding too? Like this was going to be a factor. And the fact that he was staying on was a very unique part of this and was one of the things that made this bid appealing.
It had to be a factor, especially with how heavily they touted it at that time. Now,
right.
I also think we're getting estimates of this potentially rising to 7 billion over time. I don't know what the factors are that go into that, but I do have to imagine, based on whatever contingencies there are here and stipulations, that this technically was the biggest offer from Chisholm and company here, and feels like they had to pull in some other players and actually get to that dollar total. And then there was some reporting throughout this process, and this process took a long time. I feel like this was supposed to be done last fall, at least by the middle of last season. And we're into August now, and this is just getting finalized. Even the vote got delayed, in Vegas. That was supposed to happen while we were out there. So this thing evolved, and new parties came in, and it feels like they needed to actually accumulate a dollar figure that was going to get to that top amount there. But Pagliuca said from the start they had the largest guaranteed total figure, like in terms of what was absolutely going to be going across the table to the other side there. So there had to be other factors involved aside from money, and maybe it was stipulations about additional money here. I don't know how this stuff works, but it had to be close in my mind. There was always an argument for continuity, and I don't know if Wyc and Steve could have made their group continue alongside some new players. That was obviously Pagliuca's intention. Wyc and his family, and I think they have to be factored into this too, right? Because we got all the reporting about how big of a factor his family is in all of this. Maybe they wanted the biggest number total. Maybe they had to have the biggest money total for all the family estate planning stuff that went into this. So I'm sure there were a lot of reasons why this went Chisholm's direction. All I know is that there's an argument that fans might have been more comfortable with Pagliuca just because they know him. We don't know anything about Chisholm yet. Seems great. Seems like
Right.
seems like he's intending, and this whole report here has a lot of quotes, the release from the Celtics rather, about championships being everything and we're trying to get more and blah blah blah. But we're not going to know anything about this group until we actually see the map. And unfortunately, we're heading into a season where I think no one's expecting there to be championship level action from this group. So they do get a transition year per se, which is convenient and helpful for them probably.
Yeah, and I would have loved to see what would have happened if the Celtics, Tatum doesn't go down, they make to the finals, even if they lose in the finals, but like they demonstrate that the pieces are there for another year. Like then what does this ownership group do? Obviously financially this was going to be a tough situation regardless. Like my frustration with, I know a lot of people feel some animosity towards the new ownership group. Actually, I don't think it's the majority of fans, but I've seen some fans express that. And it's just like almost impossible to isolate. Like, are these moves a result of simply the second apron and any team would have
Don't
done
get
this
me started with
regardless of what
that.
happened? Is it really the fact that Tatum went down and that kind of resets everything and they felt like without Tatum, that's the nucleus of everything they do? Or is there some element of like maybe the previous ownership group handles things differently this summer? And maybe they keep Porzingis or maybe they keep Drew. I don't know. We're never going to know which of those factors like did what in this context. And so I don't even really enjoy speculating too much, but I am curious to see how this ownership group kind of proves to be over the coming years, because Steve Pagliuca will never know what his vision was going to be and how he would have been without the Grousbeck family. But we do know that he walks out of here the most beloved guy probably in the mix. Like everybody, clean slate, like no, he wanted the team, he tried to buy it, he's trying to bring a WNBA team to Boston now too. We'll see how that goes. So it's almost like he quit while he was ahead as the Wyc, and Bill has an uphill battle to climb for sure.
Yeah, he actually has to do it all. And of course, Pagliuca was promising luxury tax payments into the future and this and that and the third. And, you can say that at that time, whether that would have actually happened or whether there was actually any feasible path to him buying this team is another question. And I think it relates to the W thing he's doing now. I'll say this in terms of second apron, tax, all the different stuff we've been debating throughout the summer as I come to my conclusion here about what would have happened if they had Tatum and where this is going. I think when you look back on it, the second apron probably did force them to make at least the holiday trade. Porzingis, I mean, that's just such an opportunity if you're not crazy about where he's at health-wise and all that stuff to get off that contract almost in its entirety. And that's where we were at that time, right? We were looking at both of those moves and saying, all right, it's not great, but it makes sense. It's Horford walking out the door, no real center with a track record of playing an entire season being in the mix here. And this roster just generally looking like it's at a standstill and not having competitiveness, at least championship competitiveness, be the top priority this year. I think that's where Tatum comes into play. I think that's where we're going to see with this tax bill. Like, it would have been unfathomable for this team to get out of the tax if Tatum was playing, and we would have been furious. Now, if they would die below this tax line, they're what, 9 over? I'm certainly going to be like, all right, I don't love it, but whatever. I get it. And that's what sucks about this season, is a lot of it's just going to be whatever. Tatum's out.
But that's the Tatum injury. Yeah, like with Al, like I'm a huge proponent of they should have prioritized resigning Al to a 2-year deal even. That's probably the offseason move that I'm the most critical of, honestly, of all the moves that they made. And
we don't know why he's gone, though, exactly. And I think that's going to be interesting to hear when he does sign with the How are we still here in August on August 20th? Remember, like 2 months ago, I was like, all right,
that's
be ready
just the
for the Al
Kuminga stuff.
show. I know, but it's crazy. We never expected this.
I pre-wrote an Al Horford signs with a Warriors article like 3 months ago, and it's just been sitting there. I think it's lost in our old. We switched CMSs since then, so I don't think I'm gonna be able to publish it. But I think with Al, obviously contention was going to be a priority. Like that's clear. I've heard that was a big focus for him is wanting to be somewhere competitive now, and obviously that's not going to be the case in Boston, or at least contend for a championship. He doesn't have many years left. Although I don't know how many he has left because it seems like he always has one more than everybody thinks. But I think Al is with his team if Tatum does not get hurt. Like you remember the reporting before then. I think Brian Windhorst had a story in the days leading up to like in the midst of that Knicks series about how, I think he was going to try to get as much money as he could. But at the end of the day, like it would have been very, very surprising for him to walk away from this team. And everything changed that night. We know that. But probably no one person's fate was more impacted by that injury than Al's. As far as
we saw it that night.
Yeah, I tell people this all the time, like being in that locker room, and Al was the first guy that spoke, and you could just see, like, I felt like I saw his whole future flashing before his eyes and his whole kind of relationship with his franchise and everything. And everybody was on the line. I mean, I didn't know what this meant for Jalen, for Derek. Remember, those two guys were heavily in trade talks. I don't even want to say rumors, but their names kept coming up around the draft. So, but I really do think the Al move was a bummer because one, I think there's a level of continuity and kind of a winning culture that he would bring next season. And two, the year after that, Tatum comes back. Like I still think he has a couple good years left. But it's hard to judge Bill and this ownership group for not prioritizing like a good center next year because I don't think that very many NBA teams would be doing that once you've just stripped. You lost 2 rotation players, three of your top 6 players you lost for next year. So you're not really thinking the next year is a championship year when you already weren't very close last year. So that's the tough thing. That's why I don't really have like a take on Bill right now. I do have a take that I wish it had been Steve Pagliuca because I think it would have been better for everybody in the organization. It would have been from the community. Like he was really the guy that did a lot of the off-court stuff. I don't know if people know that, but he really was like one of the leaders of the off-court thing. So Bill might be that guy too. He might be, doing events and, he did a lot of stuff with Jalen and all that. So like the door's open for him, but we just don't know at this point. And there's a lot of other guys that are invested in part of this ownership group. I looked at everybody's backgrounds. It's like, I mean, this is no surprise to anybody, but it's basically just a bunch of rich guys that have very little ties with Boston. Yeah. So I'm looking at all of them because I'm seeing if there's anything interesting about any of them in particular, but it's just Bill's one of like 9 stakeholders now. So we'll get to know those guys too, and we'll see what their roles are.
Yeah, and the line that stood out to me, and it's no surprise, is that 6th Street had a significant hold in this purchase, or however they described it, and that's the private equity here. And I know that's Chisholm's background too. I think that's what concerns a lot of people when you look at it because we just understand and know what private equity typically does to a business. So we'll see. Like private equity to me doesn't mean let's spend as much money as possible to win a championship. Typically, again, I'm going to give them every benefit of the doubt until we see what they do, but that's typically not what that means.
I believe the NBA rule is the private equity firm can own up to 12.5%. And so it's a sizable amount, but it's not more than that. And they do own a stake in the Spurs as well, which that to me, again, I'm not the expert on the legal side of like ownership stakes, but how can one private equity firm have a significant stake in 2 NBA teams? But then you can't.
They're
have
big fans of Luke Cornett.
There you go. but that just looks, there's so many stuff like this that I've figured out over the last couple months, like as this ownership story has become so big, that I'm like, why is this allowed? But then like they are such sticklers about so many other things as it relates to what we're seeing with the WNBA side right now, where a bid is being shut down because of the dumbest reasons. We'll
There's
get
a
to
lot
it, but-
going on there too. Like, we thought expansion was going to happen. Doesn't seem like that's as likely now. There's a whole NBA Europe thing coming together that probably is going to have some outside
That
money
shocks me.
infusing capital into the league. Do you like it?
But I don't get why no more NBA expansion. Like that has to be like such a no. I mean, I don't know. I cover the WNBA full time as well, and like the expansion is so obvious there because they were 12-person league last year, but I feel like the NBA could easily field a few more teams, and the money is
They
there.
don't want to
and
split the
interest
new
is there.
TV money. And
Is that really the
there's
main reason?
yeah, and they have stuff set up. So basically an expansion team would put in an expansion fee that all the other owners would split. They'd have a limited percentage of the cap that they can spend to for some amount of time. And I believe there's like a grace period over when they'd actually get TV money, but eventually TV money would be split 31 ways or instead of 30 or 32 ways instead of 30. So there is a thinking now that if we just do this NBA Europe thing, we're not splitting TV money with those teams. We have
But
licensing.
that's a different league.
It's a different league. They'd still be getting money from it, but they're not splitting up TV money with those teams. So they found a different way, I guess, that they can get an infusion of money and expand and have new teams that players can play to. Because if you're going to go to Europe now and play for Real Madrid, you could be loosely attached to the NBA through Real Madrid. And it seems like it's going to be them, Barcelona, some teams like that are involved in that thing, which I think is pretty cool. If people like soccer, if people like those basketball teams that those teams have, and they've always had a very loose association with each other through the EuroLeague. Having and again, I'm sure a lot of people in Europe want like the tradition of Euro League and all that different stuff being broken up. But I think it could be good because the argument at the heart of all this is that there's too much good talent that's not in the league. We've talked about Lonnie Walker and O'Shea Brissett just went over to Israel, and guys like that just don't have a spot in the league because there aren't enough spots. So this is a solution to that.
I will say, especially somebody that, I really like covering the G League and kind of the two-way players and all that. Like, it is pretty wild how difficult it is to make it in the NBA when you're one of those borderline guys who we've seen can come in and be an impactful NBA player at stints. And then, so I honestly don't know too much about the NBA Europe idea. I thought that it was kind of inevitable that there would be like two more teams, two more cities added.
Seattle and Vegas.
Yeah, right. Like that feels like that's been discussed for so long. But it's happening on the WNBA side, that's for sure.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that now, but Chisholm's the owner at this point, and we'll see what the action is. I do hear that we're probably going to get introduced to him in the near future here, maybe in a matter of weeks, a month or so. So now that this is official, I do think we'll hear from Bill Chisholm, who we have read in interviews, and he's been in the Boston Globe a lot and all that stuff, but he actually hasn't been in front of a microphone on camera much. So it'll be interesting to hear from him. Maybe we'll hear from some of the new players as well. I was around a lot of the new players at Fenway last week, so we'll talk about that in a little bit here, as well as this big WNBA news story that came from ESPN this week. First, I want to give a shout out to, as always, our great partners over at Prize Picks, and you can check them out right now. Great stuff going on over there. And of course, as you know, football season's coming up, and that's the best time to go over to Prize Picks, whether it's college football or preseason football. There are some great games coming up. I know my favorite college team starts next weekend, so I'm ready for that. They're playing down in Atlanta. So they're going to be a lot of fun games and action coming up, and all the stars are going to be back on the football field. Saquon Barkley, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers. And I know you're all drafting your fantasy teams right now, and there's a lot of hope when the year gets started, but you know what happens. Injuries hit. Things don't go the way you thought they would. You lose a couple games. So your season could be over fast if you're doing full season fantasy. But my favorite thing about Prize Picks is you can do it every week. You can build a new team every week, and it's simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could win cash, and we could cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. Available in more than 40 states now. They put their members first. All withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. And it's the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off? Which players aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. The best place to win cash while watching sports. Join millions of users and sign up today. And I don't have the code right in front of you here, but you know it. It's CLNS, and you'll get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Just play $5 and get $50 with code CLNS. CLNS gets you 50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Prize Picks. Run your game. Head over there, download it. And again, use that code CLNS first time you run your lineup over there. Prize Picks, run your game. So let's get into this W thing. And if you haven't read the story, it's pretty startling. Some of the information they had in here, the depth of this conflict between the Mohegan tribe, which owns the Connecticut Sun, Steve Pagliuca's group, which bought or agreed to buy the Sun a couple weeks ago and received immediate pushback from the league, which had preceded even news of this happening. And we got on with Gary and talked about it that day, knowing there was a lot of hope. It seemed almost inevitable when the report dropped that they were going to end up in Boston within a couple of years here after this $325 million offer on August 2nd. We get a follow-up report after that. We hear from the league, and then it quickly seems like that thing's not happening. And so in this piece, you read that the league was pushing for them to sell to a Cleveland group because Cleveland was lined up for expansion. And that was certainly the league's line at that time, that Boston hadn't gotten in on expansion. There's been all these other cities that have, and they can't cut the line like that necessarily. We also read again that Bill Chisholm, who we just talked about, has interest in bringing the W to Boston down the line, and the league likes him as an owner in that situation. And the worst part of all of this, and we teased it at that time when we last talked about it, is that now that Cleveland's filled and it looks like that's going to be an expansion franchise, the league is looking toward potentially moving the Sun to Houston as part of this expansion process. And if this timeline ends up being the same here of expansion or movement, in this case to Houston / expansion to Boston, like 2033, there could be 5-6 years here where New England doesn't have a team at all. And I know that was always your worst case scenario for how this thing could play out. And now it feels like the most likely one.
Yeah, I mean, this is not my reporting, right? I'm just consuming the media along with the rest of you guys, but I don't understand how the WNBA is getting away with this, because at the end of the day, the Mohegan Sun tribe own the team. They have owned the team. They were owners long before a lot of these NBA owners wanted to get it on the WNBA. Now everybody wants to get on the WNBA. 15 years ago, they didn't. And so I understand the WNBA, the NBA are one, and I think that it makes sense for them to have as many owners that own both teams, like a Joe Lacob situation with the Warriors and the Valkyries. It's very convenient for the league. It works in multitude of economic ways. And I think the idea that Steve Pagliuca, who no longer owns the Celtics, is going to own this team, and nobody's building a arena, and Bill Chisholm is owning the Celtics, I don't think they like that. I also think that the fact that they might have to play some games in Providence or in Hartford.
That was the most bogus thing of it. The lack of availability of TD Garden dates, to me, is last on the list of issues here that are preventing this from happening.
I think it might actually be last on the list of issues, but it's the most valid reason, and so I don't blame them for hinging.
Is there any problem if they have to play a handful of games in Providence and Hartford? I think that actually might be better.
I mean, I think it's cool. I like the idea of the New England Sun, and they have a couple of games in other places, but in general, like, I think they're trying to move toward these teams having stable homes with a home arena that they're not going to get disrupted. Like, the Celtics wouldn't get disrupted because they have something else going on, right? There's a certain level of you're not the priority if you don't get to, if you're getting ousted from your own home arena for critical games, and now you're already playing half of the games on the road. Now this, I get it. I don't think it's a good enough reason, but I understand that as a complaint. The biggest thing that I'm sick of hearing about is that the Boston bidders did not put in a bid for expansion, because why would Boston try to buy put in a bid for an expansion team when there's a team in Connecticut that everybody knows is going to be up for sale? And I think that these conversations were happening. Everybody knew this was going to happen. NBC Sports Boston, the same channel that broadcast the Celtics, broadcast the Connecticut Sun. Like, this was Boston's team. They had an annual game in Boston. And so obviously there was going to be multiple players that were interested in bringing that Connecticut team to a bigger market in Boston while still being accessible to Connecticut fans. Like, if you are a fan of Connecticut and the team moves to Boston, it's not convenient, but you can still root for it as your regional team. If they move to Houston, I don't know what's going to happen to that fan base. Like, you keep rooting for the Houston Sun, or is it,
I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think so.
I think the Mohegan Tribe has made clear that they want to keep the Sun in New England. And at the same time, and yeah, this is a really good comment here by Derek, like, other independent owners are basically like, you're basically relegating those owners and those ownership groups. And these are some of the best ownership groups for a long time in the W, like the Seattle Storm. I think they had the league's first practice facility. The Las Vegas Aces right behind them. Like, they've been kind of like the best owners out there for the WNBA. And now it's kind of seeming like they just want to have parallel teams for the WNBA and the NBA. And the Tribe wants to do it, and the Tribe wants to keep it in New England. They have an owner that is reliable, that's been in the NBA circles. Like, it's not like some random guy off the street. Steve Pagliuca, at the end of the day, was one of the largest owners of the Celtics for 23 years. Like, I don't think the WNBA should come in with a preference and just decide what they want. Like, this is what we want this team to do. Okay, Storm, you're up for sale. You have to go here. Like, and they're also offering $250 million reportedly, which is far less than the $325 million that Steve Pagliuca.
And that was always Gary's thing, right? How are they as the league going to pass up an offer like this? And
yeah,
I want to get to this as well. The fact that Mark Lasry came in, and this report is saying basically matched the Pagliuca bid. This is a former owner of the Bucks, whose plan was to put them in Hartford. And as much as we're excited about Boston, I don't think anyone would have had a problem with the team moving to Hartford, especially since a lot of their fans, as you've mentioned, don't want them to go to Boston. They want them in Connecticut.
Yeah, I think Boston's a better market for the players. And I think if you poll the average Connecticut Sun player, where would you rather go? They'd rather go to Boston. And obviously I'm biased because I live in Boston. I'd love to have a team here. But objectively, if the Mohegan Tribe gets a really good bid that's comparable with the Pagliuca bid for Hartford, and that's also within like the 90-mile radius or so.
And that's where this got ridiculous, because they pushed back on this deal even though it was allowed. Yeah.
To me, it's like, I've tried to not be this person. I know there's a lot of people that are like, the WNBA is the most poorly run league. Like, they can't get out of their own way. Like, I know that's like a common line. I try not to go ahead and say that because it's almost like a tired trope to just regurgitate. But at the same time, this is one of those examples where I'm like, the stars are kind of aligning here. You got a good bid. They're going to make a ton of money. It's great for the Tribe. It's what the Tribe wants to do. You're still giving the Connecticut fans potentially some games of Connecticut. It's still the New England team. I think they can keep a lot of like the indigenous components, the tradition, the history of this like very winning franchise. It's been one of the league's best for a long time. And now the WNBA is basically saying, we don't like how you went about this, so we're going to maybe buy the team ourselves for way less money and force them to Houston. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. And I think I totally agree. I think it's a very bad precedent. And also, I think from a business standpoint, they're not being a WNBA team from 2027 to 2033 in New England, when the league is like at the highest rate of growth right now. And this has obviously been a huge market for all sports. It seems like a little bit misguided as well. Connecticut has been the women's basketball state. UConn women's basketball has been the powerhouse for our lifetimes. And then on top of that, you have Boston as a major media market. Like, I just don't get how you would lose both of those to try something completely different. So it just seems like a huge mess, and I hope that it works itself out and that the Tribe gets what they deserve, that the players can stay in New England, and that there's a team to root for. If you are a diehard Connecticut Sun fan, like, the Boston thing was already distressing, but this is like, come on, like, you've totally lost any semblance of a franchise.
Yeah, it's crazy that that's where this seems to be heading. And again, I don't think the league can necessarily force them to sell to them. So maybe there's a scenario where they just stay where they are in the Tribe's hands as it stands. If they don't like the league offer, if they don't like the plan to leave Connecticut, I don't think they can be forced to give up this team. So maybe that's another way that this plays out, is that this just gets pushed in the future. And I guess that's just a status quo thing, despite all these different possibilities that have emerged here. As I read it too, and it does seem like Pagliuca kind of gets screwed here. As far as I can sense, I don't think, and he put out a lot of like compelling stuff here, right? $325 million, $100 million practice
Yeah.
facility. I don't know how much sense he had that this was actually going to be feasible when it happened, though. Because again, I think a lot of this reporting says that the league never gave any indication that this would be allowed. So of course they put it out through the Globe, and there's this exciting announcement. I think that was great for Pagliuca at that time, but I don't know if they ever had a sense that this was actually going to be possible. So that's one layer to this. And then two, I can't help but go back to the Celtics stuff, where if they could have figured out a better transition / sale plan, maybe the Sun could have been part of all of that, with Pagliuca involved, with Wyc Grousbeck involved. Like, I know you said that your preference would have been Pagliuca. Well, if he was buying the Celtics and bringing the Sun to Boston, that would have been maybe the best case scenario on all fronts, rather than Chisholm trying to make this happen in 2033, which, as we've mentioned, could work, right? Like, who knows where anything's going to be in 2033. But what we do know is that all the momentum, all the excitement, all the peak of popularity for this league is happening right now. And, maybe that just keeps going and going and going. And
Yeah,
there's
we have
more
no
stars
idea.
coming in, and Boston's still in a very hot basketball place. But we know for a fact 2027 would be good timing. I don't know what's going to be happening here in 2033. Is Tatum and Brown even still here anymore? I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea. I will say one thing, and this is speculating here, but this comment by Derek, jokingly here, or maybe not jokingly, I'm blaming Chisholm for something that must be up. I do find it bizarre that in that initial statement that the WNBA put out, Bill Chisholm is mentioned as like he's potentially interested in bringing a team to Boston too. It's like, okay, great. Like, I don't know, like he didn't put in a bid for this time, so like I guess down the road I get the sense that like maybe he went to the league and was like, hey, I just put all this money in to buy the Celtics for a record price, and now
I think it's a combination of that and the other cities being mad that Boston's cutting the line.
But the other cities, it's like, okay, well, you should have bought the Sun. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I feel like that
Cleveland tried.
That on its own doesn't give me enough. Like, I don't know. I don't really buy that.
Yeah. Well, that's the right that the Sun have. That's the right that the Sun have, is to prioritize staying in New England. And I think that's what they're probably going to do here. Because, like you said, the worst case scenario is them ending up in Houston. And that just opens up a whole bunch of questions about how this is going to work for Boston ever. Because I think we both agree that you probably can't have Connecticut and Boston together. And unfortunately, that might just lead to status quo holding here until at least the WNBA changes its mind on this. But they seem adamant about this.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, I don't like the sound of it, and I don't really like, if it doesn't happen in Boston, that I never expected there to be a team in Boston in 2027. Like, I honestly didn't see that in the near future. But not having a team in New England for that long feels like a massive loss for the women's basketball community in Connecticut and for Boston sports fans. I just think that's a huge loss when you look at where else there are teams right now, where else they're committing to adding teams. Yeah, to take away from New England just feels like a massive mistake.
Yeah, you don't get Boston, New York. You don't get Boston, LA. All the stuff Gary mentioned when he was on here. And
yeah, I like the rivalry stuff. But again, like, I really don't want to underplay. Like, women's basketball in Connecticut is so massive. Like, it is so massive. It has been, before women's basketball was cool, before it was this big thing that it is now, like on a national level, it has been big in Connecticut. And that's the fan base that's kind of like, yeah, right. And that's the fan base that's really been like holding the Connecticut Sun. And so, like, I just don't understand how you tell that whole market, like, yeah, the WNBA forced us to sell to Houston, even though we had better bids that were better business for the Mohegan Tribe in Hartford and in Boston. Like,
I think they need to take a long look at the Hartford thing, as much as I want Boston too. So we will continue to track this story. It sounded too good to be true when it first happened on August 2nd again. Yeah. And then, of course, it went a direction worse than I think we could have imagined here, with a lot of the details coming out of this thing. So great story on ESPN, Ramona Shelburne, as well as Alexa Filippo. Did I get that right?
Yes, Alexa, I think.
So check that out.
The Athletic had a good story too. Mike Corkino had a great story as well, kind of behind the scenes on the sale. I think I think there's a lot of reporting is coming out right now, which is always interesting to hear about like why and who is allowing certain pieces of information out as well. I think the tribe has been more active, is my impression.
Yep. So we will move on here. I got some other notes at the end that we can get to, but I wanted to do this with you, Noah, because you were so reluctant. And I'm just as much as I continue to hear optimism from you about the season, I want to stack up where we're at with teams in the East. And I did this with Law Murray a couple weeks ago. I did it with Michael Pina, who came on and put the Celtics 12th in the East. He's probably the lowest I've heard anyone, including John, I think, who's pretty low on them, on this Celtics team. He thinks it's going to be rough for them. I've settled in on 9, I feel like, and we'll stack them up here. Our lists are pretty similar as we go through them, and I don't know, should we start from the bottom or should we start from the top here in the standings?
Do you have ours, or should I just pull mine up?
So you got yours. I have them as well. I have mine in front of me. So I guess we'll just go through with yours and we can just rattle through the bottom, I guess. So at the bottom, I think everyone knows who the bottom 3 are going to be.
Yeah, I think the bottom 3 are the 3 teams that do not appear to be intending to win next season, which are the Brooklyn Nets, the Washington Wizards, and the Charlotte Hornets. I don't know which of those how that's going to stack up, but I don't really care because I think that they're all kind of in the same boat. Do you agree with me on those 3?
Yeah, I have the Nets at the bottom. I have the Wizards right behind them, especially since they need a tank this year to keep their pick. I'm a Hornets guy. I like some of the stuff they have, but they're hurt to start the year. They don't have a clear center either, so it's probably going to be pretty rough for them again this year. And that defense hasn't made any progress even since Charles Lee took over. So I have them at the 13th spot. So now, how many do we have here? I have them in the bottom 3 anyway. So then we get to a couple teams that I also have out of the playoff mix here initially. In the Bulls and Raptors, you definitely see both of them out of the playoffs behind Boston.
I don't see anything definitely. Like, I think there's a world where the Raptors, some of their young guys start to gel. They have a healthier season. And
I'm stuck on the Raptors. I don't know.
They're in the play-in mix. But when I was ranking this, first of all, I felt like I wanted to put the Celtics in the top 6 initially. And then it was like getting really hard to do that just because I started thinking about each individual team. And I was kind of like, okay, like these are all the things that could go wrong for each of these teams, but also a lot could go wrong for Boston. But the bottom 3, Brooklyn, Charlotte, Wizards for like the 13, 14, 15 spots, that was pretty intuitive. And then the Raptors and the Bulls right before them, I felt pretty comfortable with that as well, kind of in the play-in mix. That's where they always are. So it feels like.
Yeah, and they finished the year so strong. So both of them finished the year really strong, actually. So it is tough to give them no benefit of the doubt for that. But the Bulls, to me, it feels like they're going to come apart soon. They haven't even signed Giddey yet. I don't know what's going to happen there. And Vucevic, you're already reading, could be bought out mid-season. So I think that's where that thing's going. The Raptors, the starting 5 are compelling on paper as names. I don't know how they're actually going to gel together, as you said there. They did finish the year over the final stretch run 2nd in defense, which was pretty impressive. Played the Celtics tough in one of those games. They have some good pieces, even off their bench. So there's a lot to like there. To me, though, the trade-off, and I know you agreed with this, is probably going to be between them and Philly, who, talking to a couple people over the last days, feel people are underrating a little bit, and that's initially how I felt. But I just, and we haven't talked schedule, no, but the Celtics are going to play them 3 times in the first month. I'm not certain about George being there for any of those games, and I don't expect Embiid to be there on opening night. I'd be surprised if he is after everything he's gone through physically here in the offseason surgery. So that whole are they in, are they out thing has me pretty low on Philadelphia too, even though I like Adam Bona, I like Justin Edwards, I like Tyrese Maxey, I like a lot of their young players. I think VJ Edgecombe could win Rookie of the Year potentially here, challenge Cooper Flag for that. But Embiid, George, are they in, are they out? I just think that last year already showed how disruptive that is.
Yeah, I had the 76ers in the 10th spot, I believe.
I do as well.
That's because last year I think I had them at like second or something.
We
And
both did. We're both
it was so
moving up
embarrassing
and
all
down on the
year. So I
Sixers
was like, you know
together.
what? I'm gonna overcorrect here. I'm gonna have them barely making the play-in. I really like their young guys. So like you, I can see things coming together. Just like Maxey has an awesome season. He struggled a little bit though when he has kind of shouldered the primary scoring responsibilities. I love Maxey, but I think that like the numbers, like he's had his like the season that Jalen Brown's about to have, he's had that opportunity, and I think that naturally took a little bit of a dive, but I don't know. I saw a picture of Paul George in a knee brace recently, like on one of those accounts that just like over invades players' privacy. He was like at a festival or something. But when I was putting this ranking together, I thought about that picture and I was like, these guys are just going to be injured all year probably. So have them in 10th, and I have the Heat in 9th. And I just feel like they're perennially going to be in that spot, like until something drastic happens. Like they still have some talented players. They still have Eric Spoelstra, but looking at like the top 6 teams in the East, like I just don't see that they have the firepower to compete. So yeah, that was my 9th, 10th Heat 76ers.
So this is where we split up a little bit. And real quick on Philly, I think we can both agree on this. There is a best case scenario where they're 2 or 3 or even 1.
Yeah.
Like if everything goes right,
if Embiid's healthy and like is back to like even
they could be in the
similar to
finals.
MVP form. Yeah.
I mean, this
I've done to me, it's like picking the Clippers to win the championship. It's like you can do it, you can talk yourself into it, but you may as well not.
They really are the Clippers of the East.
Historically, except like worse because they like actually like I don't know. They've had worse seasons. Like the Clippers at least make the playoffs, but I think I just look at it as like what are the odds that Embiid and Paul George are going to be healthy next year? Like not very high. I hope I'm wrong. Like I'm always rooting for guys' health, but
just I feel tepid about being so low on them though, because just listen to this roster. Quentin Grimes, that was 21 points a game for them down the stretch last year. Edgecombe, love him. Jared McCain probably would have been rookie of the year if he didn't get hurt. Janae Broom.
Sorry to interrupt you. Is he a restricted free agent still?
He still is.
Are they going to be able to keep him?
I'd imagine so. I don't think he's going anywhere. The Nets aren't bailing any of these guys out, and the Nets are the only team with money. So these restricted free agents are kind of stuck. You got Jabari Walker. Remember the game Jabari Walker had against Boston last year with the Blazers?
That's crazy.
Like they got him out of nowhere. Kelly Oubre's still there. Andre Drummond's still there. I mean, this roster is just rock solid. They just don't have their 2 stars most nights. And that's so disruptive. So I'm putting them at 10-2. You have the Heat 9. So I'm giving the Heat the benefit of the doubt. They couldn't put the ball in the basket down the stretch of the season at all. Those games against the Celtics were tough to watch after they traded Butler. But I think the Butler thing no longer hanging over their head is going to be a big lift. I think Spoelstra is going to feel relieved by that and show what he's capable of again. Last year was a bizarre season for him. They have Bam, they have Hero, Wiggins, who I like. I love Khalil Ware and Bam in that double big look. They pick up Norman Powell for basically nothing. They traded Kevin Love and Kyle Anderson in that trade. That was a very underrated trade.
That was great. Norman Powell I did give me a little pause remembering that he's on the roster next year and what kind of season he's coming off of with the Clippers, where he was really a borderline. I thought it should have been an all-star. So that could be like the thing that they were missing, is that like guy that can drop 20 on any given night. And maybe I'm a little low on them. Like that's actually probably.
And they're always going to defend. And here was the biggest reason I bumped them up. They're healthy. Everybody's available. Pacers, that's not the case. Celtics, that's not the case. So I'm not going to give teams that are hurt the benefit of the doubt over teams that are healthy right now. So I have the Heat 6. I'm a little higher on them. And then you got Pelle Larsson, Nikola Jovic, Jaquez, who took a little bit of a step back last year, Davion Mitchell. They have a lot. I like what they have. Kasparis, Jack Guccionis, who they drafted. So I have them 6. 9. Who is 9 for you? Oh, you had the Heat 9. You have Pacers 8.
I have Pacers 8, Celtics 7. So the play-in battle I have right now is Celtics, Pacers, Heat, 76ers.
It's very easy to see the Celtics and the Pacers having almost the exact same season. I'm a little higher on the Pacers, though. And I'm surprised you're not, because you love the Pacers.
I love the Pacers. I love Tyrese Halliburton. Like, a lot of what I love about the Pacers is him. That being said, like talking about right now, like it's funny because I have these rankings, like they are for sure very, very wrong. Like for sure next year the rankings will look completely different than what I'm
The East
predicting.
is fun. There's a lot of
Yeah, one of the
variability
things
here.
that wouldn't shock me is if the Pacers are the second seed. I don't know. Like Nemhard could put together and all. Like it's possible, you know? Like they have
Yeah.
a lot of guys that have really high upside. Benedict Mathurin is on the cusp of being an all-star in my eyes. He's one of those guys that's like maybe playing in the
And
wrong
he's
era
gonna
a little
start.
bit. Yeah.
And they
And
got
so
Jay Huff. And again, we're stacking up their challenges with the Celtics. It's like they both lost their centers. They both lost their
lost their
star.
hub, their offensive hub. Yeah.
They both have these really good options to step, like Jaylen Brown, great option to step into the Tatum role.
Siakam, like,
Nemhard.
yeah.
Siakam's done it before. So I gave the Pacers a slight edge over the Celtics because of Rick Carlisle. Siakam haven't taken on that role before. Jalen's done it for a game at a time. Siakam's done it for long stretches. And then Nemhard too, we've seen capably step into Halliburton's role in the playoffs, even if it was just for a couple games there in that Boston series. So with Mathurin, Neesmith, Shepherd, Toppin, like I think the Celtics could say, all right, 1 through 3 were better than the Pacers, but 4 through like 8, I like what the Pacers have a lot, including Jay Huff, who I thought was just an absolute steal for them. He was really good for Memphis last year, and they just stole him from them. So I have the Pacers 8, just ahead of the Celtics.
Yeah, the Celtics are just so hard to project right now. Like everything has to go. I don't want to say everything, but a lot has to go right for them to end up with the 7th seed, which is where I have them right now, health wise. They can't afford Jaylen Brown missing 25 games. They can't afford Peyton Pritchard spraining his ankle and being out for 2 months. Like they just their margins right now are so thin, and it's so different than the team that we know. And so I picked them to be the 7th seed because my mindset is that a lot of the things that I think are going to happen. I mean, maybe I'm aware it's a little bit optimistic, but I think Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, and Jaylen Brown all have another leap that they can make, and that it really hinges on that. I also think Neemias Queta is going to surprise a lot of people and put together like a very solid starting center campaign. But if I'm wrong about one of those things, then they're not going to be the 7th seed. So like a lot has to go right. I just like those are my predictions, I guess. But it wouldn't shock me if they ended up being like the 10th or 11th seed because somebody gets hurt and at a certain point they kind of wrap it up and look towards the lottery and kind of think about things there. But right now I have them being very competitive, just given the guys that are on the roster, given the upside around some of those guys. And at the end of the day, 7th seed to 10th seed could be a game difference, right? So this is all pretty negligible. But I think they're all in the kind of the similar camp to me. I initially had them as 6th. But then when I went through the rankings, I couldn't really make a case for them to be above any of the teams that I had in the top 6. So my initial projection, people have been asking me, like, where do you see Boston be next year? I said, last playoff spot. I see them in the play-in now that I've actually done this assignment.
So your 6 was Milwaukee. And in that discussion, if there's a team I could see Boston potentially sneaking ahead of, surprisingly, it actually is Milwaukee. And you know how high I am on Giannis.
Yeah.
I think he's going to carry a lot of weight there. And this is so crazy about Giannis, by the way. Last year was his 9th straight year, first or second team All-NBA, 7th straight year on the first team. Like he's just on this extraordinary run right now of absolute dominance. And he hasn't been there in the late stage of the playoffs. So I think it's gone over people's heads a little bit. 7 straight top 4 MVP finishes. So, I mean, he's as good as anyone right now. This is his 31-year-old season, his 13th year. And he seems fully intending to carry this team. But this team is rough. Down Lillard, Miles Turner comes in, and they're dedicating $50 million to him effectively while waiving Lillard to make that thing happen. I don't even know how much of a huge upgrade he is over Brook Lopez, who's still pretty good. Kevin Porter, Gary Trent's probably their backcourt. They got Cole Anthony, which was sneaky good. AJ Green was good for them last year. I like Andre Jackson and Ryan Rollins. They have a lot of smaller guards who they need to, pick 2 or 3 out of, and a couple guys aren't going to have minutes there. Their forwards are still Prince and Portis, and that's pretty much it here. The roster around Giannis is really shaky.
I know. And so sometimes when I make these predictions...
and Kyle Kuzma, who was awful after the trade.
Sometimes, you're low on sometimes when you make these predictions, you can make a basketball case. And with some of these teams, I made a basketball case in my head when I was putting these rankings together. With Milwaukee, I just think Giannis is going to have an insane season. And
he's going to have to be MVP
somehow,
for them to be above
yeah,
the play-in line, I
and
think.
I think he's somehow going to keep this team relevant. Because I'm well aware that the reason that they were able to be a top 5 seed last year was they had 2 all-stars, right? Damian Lillard, for all the discourse around him, like, he was good.
Pretty
He
good.
was good.
Those were tough
Yeah.
games against the Celtics every time they played them.
So I don't know. I have them again. This is all negligible. Just could be a couple games difference, but that's where I have them right now. I will say this is kind of a funny idea. Can't you kind of see Anthony Simons on the Bucks?
Yeah, you fit right in with all
Right?
these other guys.
Like, it would
He
just
just
fit the
makes
vibes,
too much
yeah.
money. All these other guys are making no money. He's making 28
Yeah.
million. So there's a reason he's not.
Right. But yeah, that's what I had for 6. So the Bucks taking the last playoff spot, and then 4 and 5, I had the Atlanta Hawks in 4th, the Pistons in 5th.
As did I.
I think the Pistons might take a little bit of a step back because Malik Beasley was so awesome for them last year that I don't know. And sometimes there's these young teams that have like this breakthrough season where they make the playoffs and, you know, all the vibes are great and all of that. And then you think it's going to keep building off of it, but then it doesn't. And I know you love the Pistons, and I hope I'm wrong because I do.
They're not the
like them as
Pistons
well.
anymore, though. They're a different team than they were last year.
Yeah, I have a feeling that they're going to disappoint a little. And not that the 5th seed is a disappointment, but I don't see like another leap coming for them.
Yeah, I don't know if this
So-
roster is going to look the same at the end of the year either. They have a lot of pieces that are overlapping. Jaden Ivey's going to have to probably step into a big role now, coming back off that pretty significant injury. And he and Cade were already a pretty awkward fit. Like, they took off after Ivey went down. Not to say that was the reason why, but, you know, things just sort of fell into place after that. Now he's stepping back into the mix. Duncan Robinson, he had pretty much leveled off in Miami for a good while there. I don't know how much of a rejuvenated form we're going to see from him, even though, again, you know, just like Hauser, he's been a great shooter for a long time. Karis LeVert, never my favorite player, not the most natural replacement for Beasley necessarily, but Beasley was also pretty bad for them in the playoffs. So I'm not going to sit here and say that losing him is the most devastating thing ever, but he did. I agree with you that his edge, his personality, and of course his productivity during the season was a big reason they made that leap. But they brought in a lot of stuff to try to replace him. Chaz Lanier, who they drafted, I really like. Was a guy I was definitely looking at for the Celtics there. They lost Dennis Schroeder as well, who was decent for them down the stretch of the season. But this is really going to be on Cunningham, Ausar Thompson taking another leap, Ron Holland taking a leap. Like, I'm focused on the young guys here, and Ivey's obviously among them. I think I generally agree with you here. They could take a step back. I'm not opposed to the idea that the Celtics could pass this team, surprisingly, if all goes right and things go sideways a little bit here. But Cade's a big edge. I think he's going to be in the MVP conversation this year. You know, I think that's
the MVP conversation.
I think that's the trajectory he's on. I had him second team All-NBA last year, and he's carrying a heavy weight here still to me.
Yeah, it's really hard for guards to be in that conversation, like, legitimately. So he'd have to put together like something really special. But hey, the path
just
is
look
there.
at what he did last year. Nearly 10 assists a game, right?
But he wasn't even on the All-NBA team.
He was All-NBA third.
Oh, he was All-NBA third?
And he finished 7th in MVP last year.
I didn't realize he finished 7th in MVP last year.
He was out of this world at 23 years old. I'm a big Cade guy.
Interesting.
But he's got to stay on the court.
He wasn't on the All-NBA team.
The third team was him. Who else was on the third team? Towns, Halliburton, Jalen Williams, and James Harden. It was kind of a wacky third team. Şengün got left out. Jaren Jackson got left out. The bigs didn't get much love, so a lot of guards squeezed in. So that's my case for Detroit as 5.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I can see that. Atlanta, I think I'm just excited to see it click in my head. But this is another one of those teams.
Too.
This team,
I was talking to Lauren yesterday, and she is, as always, not as high on them as I am, and not as high on them as you are.
Well, I'm not usually high on them, honestly, but it just as soon as they got Porzingis, it just feels like this is the kind of season where they can make like a regular season push and pass some of these teams and finish with like a top 4 seed. And I don't think it's going to lead to a sustained period of winning, or this is going to be like the breakthrough of the Trae Young era, like in a legitimate, meaningful way.
They're not even going to extend him.
I don't think they're going to. I mean, we'll see. Who knows what will happen? But if Porzingis is healthy and if everything kind of clicks for that roster, that I can see them being a top 4 seed. But this is one of those teams where, again, best predictor of future injuries, past injury, we see it all the time. I could see them being an 11 seed too, if a couple guys get hurt and the defense is terrible and they're the same Atlanta Hawks that we've seen for a long time. So I have them in 4th, but it's like one of those where like I'm already thinking to 6 months from now, I might be like, what was I thinking with that Atlanta Hawks prediction over them over the Pistons and, you know, other teams.
I can already see it happening too, because like you said, the injury potential here is so obvious in certain spots that would derail them. And they could, if that happens, it'd be even worse than they were last year. They need 10 more wins as it's stacked up to get up to 4. That's a lot. Yeah, I don't feel great about this, but I'm there with you. There's a best case scenario here where this thing's awesome. I'm high on Porzingis. He looked great in those Latvia scrimmages. I don't know if you saw some of the highlights out of those. He looks like he's back to himself. So that's a good sign for them. Daniels, another year, more confident, all that. I think that's a good sign. And Jalen Johnson, I mean, this was a team that was in the home court conversation and beat the Celtics twice in Boston before Jalen Johnson went down. So that's my hope for this happening. And I think he is their best player at this point and when he's at his best. The team needs to just continue to align around him, I feel like. And Trae just needs to continue to try to fit in, which he did last year. And I like the coach. I like some of the new pieces. Alexander Walker's solid. Luke Kennard is solid. And Porzingis, I think, brings it all together if he can stay on the floor. So we shall see. They need to find a third center, though, because obviously both of those guys are going to miss a lot of games. 3, I'm right here with you. And Pina, actually, when he was on here, said he has the Orlando Magic winning the Eastern Conference this year. And I want to say the same because I'm back to that series last year with Boston. A massive fan of the Orlando Magic and their players and Paolo, who I think could also be in the MVP conversation this year. But I need to see the offense actually come together because they could have pushed the Celtics 7 if they could put the ball in the basket, and they just could not.
Yeah, they're probably still lacking shooters, like the amount of shooters you need in today's NBA, but Desmond Bane, who I will admit, like my initial reaction to that trade was like, that many picks for Desmond Bane. And then the more I looked into like what his advanced analytics are, how much of an elite shooter he is, which I honestly didn't realize how elite of a shooter he was until I started diving into the numbers. Like that fit seems like it's going to be perfect. And right now, if you look at a lot of these Eastern Conference teams, the Celtics, the Pacers, they have clear holes on their roster. This team has all the pieces. They're paying all their guys. Like
it's kind of now or never. And the defense is monstrous.
Yeah. Right. And I loved that team. Like I love the way they played. I think there's a culture in there. There's a coach that seems to have buy-in from the guys on the roster. I think Desmond Bane is only going to uplift what they're doing. So they were the 5th seed a couple years ago. And so
yeah, they were in that 4 or 5 mix. And last year they were still 7 despite being ravaged by injuries.
Right. So to me, it just seems like inevitable that they're going to take another leap. But I'm not willing to put them above the Knicks or the Cavs just because I'm going to go with what I've seen already. And that Cavs team, despite the disappointing playoff exit, they have shown to be an elite regular season team. They had an incredible season last year. You know, it was honestly one of the biggest shocks of the playoffs is what happened to them in the postseason. I don't think there's any that's going to trickle into next year during the season. And then the Knicks obviously, you know, beat the Celtics. We're in the conference finals. And are bringing all their guys back, have health at the top. So I couldn't justify putting them above the Cavs and the Knicks, but I think the Magic are up there. So they're my number 3.
Yeah, I went with Knicks 1. I think there's going to be a real Mike Brown boost there, and I think his style is going to fit that group pretty well. They have a couple bench pieces, as you mentioned, that they're bringing in Clarkson and Yabusele that I think are going to only help them get through a strong regular season. So I think there's a lot to love there. Playoff time, I still have concerns about the Brunson Towns thing, but Robinson's healthy to start this year, so that's another difference in the way they can play. Cleveland, I always worry after a couple of bad playoff losses, you know, the step back that you could potentially take. Ty Jerome's gone. which was a big part of what they did last year. Darius Garland's out to start the year. That's another break that the Celtics caught off their, early season schedule, is they're going to see the Cavs at home without Garland. I don't know what's going to happen there, but I do think there's a downside that's not discussed enough with them. And there's an upside if Mobley is in the MVP conversation, that they could win it all. Like, they have a real path to the finals here that they haven't had with a couple of the, buzzsaws that they've run into in round 2. But I don't know. There still seems to be something holding them back that I can't quite place my finger on. And the Knicks, to me, are a better bet to win the East. The Magic, though, I mean, here's my concerns with them, and they're not great. Like, Mo Wagner's out. He'll probably be back later in the year. They couldn't score even when Paolo and Franz got back last year, but Jalen Suggs was out for most of that time, and he'll be back. Bane, like, is there too much pressure on him to do a lot of stuff they need to do? Sure, but, like, the attention's still going to be on Wagner and Banchero, so he's going to have a lot of open shots. To me, there's so few ways that the Magic can disappoint. All they lost were Cole Anthony and KCP, who weren't that great to begin with. They're bringing in Tyus Jones and Jace Richardson in the draft as additional depth here. Like, there's so much to love and so little to hate that I almost want to get on Pina's bandwagon and say they're going to win the East. But I'm not quite there yet. Right now, I'm going to stay with New York. But that could change.
It's hard to say that a team that we've never seen this core win a playoff series. It's hard to say that they're going to beat the Knicks, who we just saw, make the conference finals, who we've seen have big playoff moments, even the Cavs, So that's the challenge for me. But at the same time, like, it does, you don't believe it until it happens, right? Like,
they just have a beat 'em up mentality.
They won the title. So
right.
Yeah, so it just, every year, any year, there's a team that you just, like, nobody would have had Detroit being the 5th seed last season. If you had asked before the year started, they were coming off of an awful year. They tinkered with the roster, but nothing that was, like, mind-blowing. So I have them, in this like, top range of the Eastern Conference, and I would be surprised if they were below that, but their ceiling is very high for sure.
So there you have it. Noah has the Celtics 7th. I have them down at 9th. Pretty similar otherwise between us here. I thought we'd maybe have a little more disagreement, but we're pretty aligned on how things look in the East here, which I think is typically how things go between us here. Last couple things. Neemias Queta, a week from today, is going to be playing in EuroBasket. I obviously put out a couple features on the preparation process. They beat Spain in their first scrimmage, which I guess was the first time that's ever happened for Portugal. And I know you've probably seen some of the highlights, Noah. He looks awesome. And I thought he looked awesome when I was out there in Portugal watching these workouts. Just physically looked really chiseled. Looked like he's, not carrying much fat at all. Looked pretty athletic and even had a nice touch on his 3-point shot, which I don't know if that's actually going to be part of what he does this year, but it's there. And he said that as well, so I wouldn't mind him trying that out a little bit in this tournament. But he had a turnaround jumper he hit. The post-up game looks awesome. He just has this burst when he's going up for dunks, too, that is really explosive. And to me, I still look back on last year, and I'm like, oh, man, they probably could have utilized him more down the stretch of the season. But he was obviously dealing with an injury, as we found out. There were other guys in front of him. And now this is his opportunity. I see almost no way there's anyone else starting except him here for the Celtics to start this year. And, I was looking it up. 2020, very similar situation. They lose Horford. They don't have much at center to start that year. Rob Williams doesn't play a ton per usual. And Daniel Tice just gave them some really solid minutes for like 64 games that year. And they went to the East Finals. I know obviously they have Hayward and Tatum and Brown and Kemba that year, so they had a lot more at the wing than they do now. But Tice was 9-6 with 1.3 blocks per game for them that year in 65 games. I feel like Queta can have that season.
I think Queta can have a better season, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, he has shown in flashes that he can be a prolific rebounder. He can be a good rim protector. It's just a question, is it all going to come together? Like, frankly, I don't know how much I care about, like, him looking athletic and fit and explosive in EuroBasket, because he always looks like that. Like, he always looks like he has a nice touch shooting around. I watch a lot of guys shoot around before games. Queta has a much better shot than a lot of guys that it would surprise people, I think, if they watched a lot of the end of
He's played well in the games too.
Yeah. So we'll see exactly kind of how things shape up, but the things that have kept him off the court, I don't think we're going to get answers to this summer. I think we're going to get answers to if he can kind of anchor this team's defense. No Al, no Luke, like no KP. Like can Queta be the guy that is, in all those Celtic schemes, guarding the best end? He's going to be guarding starting centers. Like he's going to be guarding Jokic. He's going to be guarding he's a tall task ahead of him next season. And so that's the question with him, with the ceiling and the explosiveness and all of that is there. So we'll see, but certainly like I'm really excited. I'm excited by him. And one of the reasons why I have belief in the Celtics for next season is that I think he's going to be a double-double kind of player. And we'll see how it pans out. But that's my hope. And certainly that knee surgery that he had, whatever it was, he looks like he is fully recovered from that. As does Jaylen Brown, by the way, who played in a charity game last weekend. So it seems like both of those guys should be good to go.
Yeah, he got banged up in one of these scrimmages too. So he bounced right back from that, got right back on the court, which is good. And he's going to stay with the team here. They play the Czech Republic on the 27th. And then in group play, they're going to go against Porzingis in Latvia, which will be cool. Old teammates going against each other. He's going to go against Jokic, which is obviously the Pika competition, and Alperen Şengün as well, who's pretty good. So he's going to get some real tests in this tournament. I'm excited to watch it. They're obviously heavy underdogs in that group, but they've looked pretty good so far. So we'll see what they're capable of. I'll also throw in this here right before we wrap, because I was over at Fenway, Noah. I've been doing some Red Sox. And to my surprise, the Celtics were there the other day on Monday, taking some batting practice. Joe was there, got to chat with him for a little bit. And all the new players showed up as well. And I posted this photo of a new group of players who are going to be, working with Maine and, maybe breaking in some NBA opportunities as well this year. And the response I got to it was not exactly what I was expecting, as I throw it up here. You can see a little bit on the side there. I just posted this photo. I'm like, all right, the Celtics are here. We got Shulga, we got Amari Williams, Josh Minot, who was pretty funny again, taking batting practice. Luka Garza, who we saw as well earlier in the week at a community event. RJ Lewis was there, who they got from Utah in that Niang trade. And our guy Ugo. And these are basically the kind of responses we got. Just people wondering who they are. My favorite was the comparison to Porzingis, Horford, White, Tatum, and all of them being at Fenway after they won the championship. And now it's these guys there. So,
well, to be fair, these are their two-ways and their rookies.
I know. I'm not in alignment with the comment.
But it also kind of set itself up because there are those iconic photos of them at Fenway Park from just over a year ago. So it is kind of like, whoa, had this happen quickly. But nice to see they're doing some off-season team bonding. And curious about RJ Lewis, because again, he wasn't on the summer league team, and he's another guy that's going to be in the mix.
Was he hurt or something? Why didn't he play for Utah at summer league?
I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't get to talk to him much over there. I saw him, and he did an interview with, I believe, a Dominican outlet, because I think his mom is of Dominican descent. He plays for Team DR as well.
Cool.
So Dominican slide into the spot. Al left open there. So we'll probably hear from him at training camp, and certainly up in Maine this year. Shaping up to be a pretty good Maine team as well. I caught up with Phil Pressey for a little bit over there as well, who's going to coach the team this year. So it's pretty cool. I've been covering the Red Sox, and to see all those Celtics show up that day was fun. So that batting practice footage is over on the channel. Our interview with Neemias is up on CLNS Media. Are you going to have a podcast this week coming up, Noah?
I will. I have a podcast on Sunday. There's a lot of Celtics events happening on Saturday. Peyton Pritchard's hosting a one-on-one tournament. Jaylen Brown's hosting a shoe thing. So I'll have a podcast on Sunday kind of recapping all of those interactions and all the off-court stuff. So you can find out.
Hopefully we'll hear from Peyton. I don't think he's talked outside of that NBC interview yet to general media this offseason. So we might have something from him over there. You can obviously follow along with us for all the footage of those events. I think our guy Rich will be out at the Jaylen Brown event in Worcester, Gut Soul, which you can buy a ticket to, I think, and get into and see Jaylen there. So sure a lot of people will be. We'll have coverage of both of those events. If news breaks, per usual, hit the notifications here. We will be going live. Check out our Red Sox channel. As I said, we'll have some coverage of their playoff push, even though last night was one of the toughest losses I've watched ever from them. They're still in the playoff mix, so Red Sox CLNS has you there. Red Sox Clubhouse on YouTube. The Patriots channel still pumping out content. They were just out in Minnesota covering training camp out there, and they will have continued preseason training camp coverage going right into football season starting here. And with football season starting, of course, check out Prize Picks. Go over there and make a lineup with the code CLNS. Play $5, get $50 in bonus right away. And here we go. I do have a Prize Picks banner here. Didn't notice this earlier. Get 50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup with the code CLNS over on Prize Picks. And that is it for us here tonight. Of course, check out Noah's You Got Boston podcast, as well as her coverage over on CelticsBlog.com. Check out all of our coverage on the Queta feature over on CLNSmedia.com. And we will be back next week, probably with a new show here or some guests over the next couple of days. Stay tuned for that. And we are out of here. Peace.
No one's sneaking a vegan brownie by me, I'll tell you that.
Okay, you know what, John? We're going to do it.
You have to feel that way too, Bobby.
I have to feel that way. Let's
Yeah.
fly out over and make Luke your first center.
Bobby, we gave you Luke hour early. We're not going to end this on a damn conversation about Luke